with me a very good friend, um,
Hello.
childhood friend, and now
So
adult friend.
many years.
Yeah, man, grown up together as wee babies and that. It's strange. Yeah, I've got my friend Andy with us, Andrew Greenyer, who's
Hello.
hello. Yeah, so I brought you on just to basically have a chat because we're both guitar players, both musicians,
Yeah.
um, and just to make this as like super informal as possible because I'm super lazy, right, and I can't bother to plan anything out. So I did just to give you a bit of context for this. I did originally have like a loose structure planned out for a podcast, and then the more I looked at it, I thought like that's going to be super horrible because I'm not going to be able to enjoy speaking to anyone because I'm going to be too worried about asking questions and stuff. And I was like, I'm just going to scrap it and then we'll just have a
Just gonna
crack.
go for it.
Why
Yeah,
not?
cool, man. Cool.
But
Let's
yeah,
do that.
just to give you a wee bit of context, my man, we keep in touch quite a bit anyway. But um, essentially, I'm coming to my last year of study with
Cool.
the kind of in collaboration with a few people. So I've been studying with Open University and I've been studying
Yeah.
with Trinity College Laban in Greenwich. Um, and I did a week of study down in Greenwich over the Easter, and I got together with a group of people doing the same course as me, and we stayed away for the week, and we essentially put into a room full of people we don't know, um,
Ah,
in, in a situation where it's like we know it's
nerve
super
wracking.
uncomfortable, and yeah, nerve wracking because you start thinking to yourself like I'm gonna be the worst person in the room, and like
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah,
else is
man.
going to be like sight reading beasts or like improvisation beasts, and then they're going to
Yeah.
come to you and it's going to be like you know the crack. But basically the whole reason this podcast started is because of that week, and this isn't really anything to do with my university studies. It's just I'm
Yeah.
genuinely interested in the more people I spoke to on that week and people that are infinitely better than me, musicians. When I heard them play, like do their thing on stage, and you think like they have no reason to be like insecure about what they do,
Ah.
absolutely killer. But everyone I spoke to was like cacking it before they played. Um, in every workshop that we're doing, if it was out of your specialism, so if you were doing, I don't know, like if it was anything to do with like sight reading for me, and I would have been papping myself. But everyone was really nervous about it, but no one speaks about it. And like you meet all these brilliant musicians, and I'm including yourself in that. And you meet
Ah,
these, you
play.
meet, but yeah, you know what I mean. Like you meet all these like
Yeah,
brilliant
yeah.
musicians, man, and everyone's got the same issues, the same worries. Like, I don't feel good enough here. I'm not happy with that. People are going to think this about me. So what I wanted to do is just start this podcast, which is
Yeah.
like I don't know who it's live and it'll go to whoever it goes to, but I'm just hoping that over time we can kind of get a collection of stories together and people will see like, well, look, if these guys are feeling really
Yeah.
insecure and nervous, then like it's all right if I feel like that because everyone does. So that's the context of it, and it's long-winded, but
That's to be fair, man, like I had that exact same thing. Like I went to uni and there was guys there who were infinitely better at everything, just theory completely, sight reading things like Chopin and things like that, and just going up and just this guy, Sam, amazing pianist. He goes all around the world just like playing and things like
mm,
that. And I remember just kind of people would bring in scores and we had to kind of just we had to write a piece for somebody else. So we
yeah,
just wrote a piece of music. And I mean, yourself, I struggle with like the kind of the writing, the theory side of it. Certainly, I think it's one of those things where, or one of those like massive skills as a musician where if you do it poorly, you feel like it's almost like being French, but not being able to speak French.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? That kind of thing. You're like, I'm a musician, but I can't really write it like to the same level as somebody else. Somebody pops that in front of me, man, and I'm sweating. You know what I mean?
but do you think that like so you're saying about like that analogy with sort of being French and not being able to speak, but it's kind of like so say you could speak fluent French, because to me like it
Mhm.
looks like you can speak fluent guitar, But so like if we talk about that as a language, you can speak the language, but you might struggle writing it down or reading it, but you can still get your point across. So does it really make you any less?
Yeah, I guess in that context, it's it's an odd one, because you yourself, I think it's more of a personal thing. You yourself, you feel very insecure about it, because you'll see somebody picking just a piece of score up and just going, all right, yeah, no bother. They'll just play it.
Yeah.
You put that bit of score in front of yourself, and you know you're going to be sat there and you're going to have to like work out, a rough structure to it, kind of where it might change a little bit. You kind of already sort of piecing together bits and pieces that you need to kind of get down on the fly, so that in a way you're not looking like a lesser musician to somebody else.
Yeah.
Now, that could have been the easiest piece of music ever, literally the easiest piece, like if somebody just charted some jazz kind of chords up, for example, where it's just like A flat minor 7, this, that, and the other, that kind of thing. Give me a rough like time signature, not a problem. When it's stuff like, just kind of stacked on top and things like that, I'm sat there going like, whoa, and it's that weird overwhelming thing, isn't it? You're on the spot thinking like, nah.
No one wants to make themselves look like an idiot. You know what I mean? Like,
Nah.
and I think I probably talked to you about this at the time, but a few years ago, like I got a theatre gig through a friend who'd
Yeah.
convinced me to do it was like Dolly Parton's 9 to 5. He convinced me by saying the stuff that we're playing on the show will be no more difficult than the stuff you're already playing on guitar. And I'd said, look, if it's a reading gig, like count me out, because I'm going to be so out of my comfort zone. But anyway, he convinced us to do it. And I got the charts. And so the charts came through, I think, probably like 4 weeks before the show. And I was going through, and most of it was okay, because like yourself, I could happily go through the charts and I could piece together like bits of the melody and do like all the main bits that I needed to do. But there was one tune in it, man, which was, I can't even think what it was called now. It was like this jazzy number, but it was written in so it was written in like 2/4, so it was super quick changes. And the chords like were just relentless, but they weren't just like the standard chords I was used to. And honestly, it caused me so much stress, and the whole gig, I couldn't relax the whole gig because I knew that was coming up. And everyone in the pit that was sat with us were like really fluent, sort of, fluent readers. And they were like sort of relaxed through the thing and like having a crack at each other between songs. And I was leaving every night with like a migraine. And I thought like, Jesus, like I cannot, like, and I'll tell people about that now. And it's just, I think people might expect you to have, like, if you're a musician, to have all the skills just to do music. But it isn't like that at all.
Nah.
And nobody talks about, like, so in that instance you're talking about, that dude Sam, I'm assuming it was a dude Sam.
Yeah.
When you're talking about Sam, like I'm getting some feedback, let me turn myself down. The easiest thing to do would be, in reality, is to say like, oh, I'm not great, I don't read very well. Like, I can play whatever you want, but I'm not reading very well. And just be open and honest. But I think there's so much insecurity about it, and people are so worried what other people are going to think of them, and it kind of becomes crippling because it stops you doing things that you want to do. Like, I don't know if you've checked out any of the sort of the blog or anything on my website, but I'm starting to try and write my own solo stuff, as in me putting.
I've seen some of that. Yeah. I've seen some of that, man.
And it's terrifying to do because for the longest time, like, I've wanted to write the music that I want to write for no other reason than just for myself to do it. And I help students every day finish their own compositions and do the stuff that they need to do. And I'll help them with lyrics, I'll help them with melody lines, harmonies. But see, trying to do my own stuff, just can't do it, because you get like embarrassed, and you get like worried.
And you have that fear of release. Do you know what I mean? Like the fear of release, man. You're just like, oh, I can't be putting this out.
But you think like, what people are going to think if I write whatever lyrics down, what are people going to think? And then I went through a process of thinking, well, if I write and pretend I'm writing like, as a character writing for someone else, like
Yeah.
that'll work because then it feels less personal. And then you go, nah, it's bullshit. Like I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to write something for me because I like it. And if someone else likes it, brilliant. But if they don't,
That's
like,
yeah,
why does it
massive
matter?
bonus.
Yeah.
That's it, man. Like, yeah, yeah. I've had like, I also have a lot of problems with sort of. Do you get those kind of? You'll have a student come to you and sort of say like, oh, I really like, for example, really like Megadeth, really like Megadeth, and I'll go like, cool, let's have a look at that. What kind of what tracks do you want to like learn? And they'll throw something like ridiculously difficult at you, and
Mhm.
you know yourself, you're like, whoa, you're like one you yourself aren't quite there. You're gonna have to get this under your fingers. That's gonna take like maybe even a couple of weeks, maybe even more than that. Sometimes Marty
Mhm.
Friedman solos are ridiculous.
Oh, aye.
Um, or you've got the whole thing of where you kind of you don't want to disappoint the student, so you don't want to say like, oh, you really, you know, that's a good idea. We should be looking at this. So first, get those kind of things under your fingers. It's like you kind of end up sort of having to develop this whole kind of like, yeah, just a thing. Like I always find it really difficult to sort of sit down and have to like forcefully practice certain things at times. That's what I
But
find difficult.
do you know? I mean, sort of as a role as a teacher, like you can see through the because you've. I'm just tweaking my levels as I go here because I keep getting
Yeah.
annoying feedback. Sorry, dude. Can you still
No,
hear me?
that's cool.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um. So like as the role of a teacher, and I'm just going to
Yeah.
shuffle myself forward as well. But as the role as a teacher, like you can see, so if a student wants to get to this point, and
Yeah.
like if they're down here and they're wanting to do, I don't know, like if we take the Tornado of Souls solo for example, because I've been through that
Yeah.
ringer and it's yeah, it's really hard. But
Yeah.
if they want to get to there and they're there, like if they just want to play the solo and they want to like, there's a ton of YouTube videos that someone could use and like, you could break it down note for note without learning a thing if you want and just,
Hmm.
like paint by numbers guitar, just you go and learn that from there. That's easy enough to do. But as a teacher, you think like, what do I want them to actually get out of get out of me teaching them that?
Yeah.
Is there like arpeggio shapes or like techniques that Marty Friedman's using that we could make an exercise of? Things that
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
benefit them wider than just kind of learn the solo. Because like, yeah, you can, but like why?
What's the end product? Yeah. What's the end product of that?
Yeah. And if it's just because it sounds cool, then awesome, like do that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I know what you mean. And I used to get a fear of when I was doing the private guitar teaching. I don't really get it as much anymore because I'm not doing the private
Yeah.
tuition anymore. But I used to worry that someone would come into a lesson that was better than me on the guitar. Um, I used to frequently think like, what's going to happen when someone comes in for a lesson and
And
they're
they're already
already
at like
already
level.
better than me. And
Yeah.
do you know like the so easy answer to that is you would go, look, I'm really flattered you've came for guitar lessons, but there's
But
very
I can't
little I'm
teach
going
you.
to be able to teach
Yeah.
you. Like go and see, go and see someone else. Go and see, like for me, I used to point people if I couldn't teach them, I would send them to Jimmy Savage at
Jimmy.
Newcastle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go and you've had lessons with Jimmy and stuff.
Yeah. I have.
I've had
Yeah. Yeah,
lessons with
man.
Jimmy. But like that would be the reality. But I mean, it
Yeah.
never happened because lots of people are just beginners that want lessons, and that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that freaked me out when I first started private teaching. What if they come in and they're better? Well, then they're better. Then they can't really help them.
But have you also found as well that obviously, for me, for example, I've picked up, the books. I've got like, oh God, so many books, so many different books, and you're looking through it and you're like, well, I never did that. I didn't look at that either. And you're like learning stuff as you're going along, teaching it. So you're like, oh yeah, we're going to be looking at this and we're going to be doing that. And you're kind of thinking like, man, I did that like last week. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Well, the thing is, I think with the private stuff, it's always just trying to keep. Really, you want to be sort of 3 or 4 steps ahead of a student
Yeah.
because if you're always one step, it's so tiring because you've always got to be like learning something for the next lesson.
Yeah.
Um, and that's in some regards like beginners teaching beginners is amazing because like what you might know on the instrument is like infinite to what they're just starting out,
Yeah.
and you can do all sorts of stuff. But if someone's got some basic stuff under the belt and they know a bit already, your job's a bit more difficult, isn't it? Because you've got to like
Yeah. Because you gotta and also you've got to correct some of the bad habits.
yeah, while
One
also
thing.
trying to demonstrate that you've not got bad habits as well, and like clearly
What
wouldn't.
one thing I have noticed that I pick out quite a lot, especially with the guitarists or stringed instruments, bends.
Bends.
Like, yeah, you're either on the money or you're not. And if you're not on the money, doesn't matter how good you are, it just never sounds quite right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's one thing I've always kind of picked up with like stringed instruments.
yeah. But bends are always a weird thing. Yeah, and it's something I think that just comes with time as well. But I think
Mm.
if you don't point it out and it's not obvious, because yeah, you always get that when people are doing the bends and it's
The choke.
yeah, or like it's too sharp or it's too flat or whatever. Um, but that's the thing is
Yeah.
like the role of the teacher, I suppose, is if you know with hindsight, like actually, because to be honest, the sort of the bends and vibrato for me is something that I hate in my own playing.
Hmm.
And I do actively try and work on it if I'm doing rehearsals. There's For the longest time I was trying to do rehearsals with like um adding vibrato to bent strings because my bending up was okay and like bending down was okay. But I really, when you hear like players like Zach Wild has
Like,
got that ridiculous
yeah, man. Or
vibrato.
like Ingvar Malmsteen's also a guy with massively wide vibrato. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, it's mad.
but it's looking at the finer details for things,
Yeah.
and also not being bothered or like not taking it personally if something that you're doing, if it's not right and it's not sounding right, it's something to work on, which surely is like a good thing rather than if you did everything perfectly, like there's no point in practicing.
Yeah.
um
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I submitted some recordings for. So one of the pieces I was learning for uni was a Django Reinhardt piece. I don't know if it is a Django Reinhardt piece because he's not credited with it, but everyone reckons it is. It's the Montan Saint Genevieve, the Django Waltz. Yeah, Django Waltz.
Yeah, man.
And
Didn't Joshua Stefan play a bit of that?
yeah, um,
Yeah, and he's a great player. Great player.
yeah. But I mean, there's loads of people covered it, and like I spent the reason I learned it right is because there's a local guitar player. He lives kind of not far from where I am, and he was teaching guitar for us at the high school at the time called Alex.
Yeah.
And I talked him into doing a demo for some students for us. So will he come and like play some guitar and like see if he can inspire some students to take up guitar lessons? And one of the pieces that he played was the Django Waltz, and I thought like, oh, that's mint. Like I'm going to learn how to play that. And then it became like an obsession that I had to be able to play it.
The Gypsy Swing is just it's got some tasty lines in there, man.
I
Just
love it,
like
man.
ah
But no, I had to, as one of my assignments, I recorded me playing it, and I had an old recording of me playing it as well. And at the time when I'd learned it, I was chuffed that I could do it. Like all the bits were in the right place,
mhm.
and I thought like, oh, amazing! I've got it down. And then when I started relearning it for uni, and I listened back, I thought actually like there's so much that's wrong with it, like so many details that I've just completely overlooked, like the rhythm of it, like because it's all swung and and a lot of the stuff I was doing was like straight eighth notes and just like
Oh yeah.
and like oh no, like that's not right. And then I was missing all the cool little like little trills and like grace notes and stuff. And then when you start looking at it like on that level, you think actually I've made a complete arse of that,
Yeah.
like to maybe someone that was just generally listening, they would think, "Oh, that sounds pretty. Yeah, that sounds nice." But then, so I sort of think getting back to the sort of the insecurities and things is I listened to the recording and it's a recording that's out in the ether. Like I posted it on social media.
Yeah.
I know it's out there, and the first thing I wanted to do is take it down because I thought like, oh, that
What are you
sucks.
doing? Like, yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't really suck. But like in retrospect, I can do better now, and I think like, do I
Yeah.
want that out there? But I mean, how do you feel like um in terms of like your own stuff or your own playing? because I've seen you were putting stuff out for a while on social media, and you go through phases
Yeah,
where you put things out.
this is a thing. So I'm currently in a sort of a stage where I'm a little bit bored of my own playing.
Mhm.
I've kind of hit like a plateau. So it's a weird, it's a kind of weird sort of phase that I'm in at the moment where um I was doing like a load of, load of kind of little videos, and I was kind of demoing the neural DSP stuff because I really liked the sound of it. Um, and I was like really impressed, because you go way back, sort of 2014, you've got yourself a little DAW and you've got, your little audio interface and stuff for that. But the VSTs out then were just terrible, they're like in comparison, you've got the free stuff like the Ignite amps,
Mhm.
they're really good, and it's free, and that sounds absolutely like, it's incredible, going from that to like that,
Yeah.
um, and then yeah, it just for me, I was like a little bit kind of like like I I don't know, like I put up a couple of videos and I thought like I'm just kind of regurgitating the same licks in different keys and just kind of I don't know. So I've kind of stopped at the moment. Interesting one is actually I'm addressing what my dissertation was on, which was the idea of 10,000 hours. So K. Anders Ericsson's 10,000 hours to mastery, and this is
Mhm.
in pretty much everything. However, um, there's been a couple of sort of recent things by I think a guy was called somebody Gladwell, Malcolm Gladwell,
Mhm.
in the Outliers book. And basically, it was on about kind of how it sort of doesn't really quite work, the whole thing, but like, and how like there's this whole idea of natural talent, which to a degree doesn't exist because obviously everything's a learned experience. You can, if you practice something like long enough, you're going to get faster and faster and faster.
Yeah.
And that's, unless you're Rachmaninoff on some kind of like, doing like ridiculous stretches, really your kind of your natural ability isn't going to play much into it unless you've got like, I don't know, Paul Gilbert bucket hands, that kind of thing. But
Yeah. Or sausages like me.
this is it, I've only got little hands, and so interestingly in that I kind of I put in like I was thinking, right, I need to get better, and I want to get away from where I'm at. So I listen to a lot of diverse music anyways. So I thought, okay, I'll take some ideas, put it into a practice plan and see if I can kind of just improve, like different scales, exotic stuff. Looking at Marty Friedman a lot. I mentioned
Mhm.
him before. It's just because he uses all that weird bends into all
He's a
this kind
mint
of
player.
Hungarian. It's all this exotic stuff, which sounds really, it's an ear bender constantly,
Mhm.
um, and
It's
it's
all those
perfect
little
technique.
weird, like unexpected. It's
Complete
almost like
note
he's doing
choice.
stuff,
Yeah,
yeah, by accident, and then he also clearly not, but like
yeah.
it's just it's so bizarre, and it hits you like wherever he puts those notes. It's in a really unexpected place in the bar as well,
Like,
and it's
yeah, he like plays outside the scale and then inside the scale, and you're just like, whoa. And every now and again, you're kind of just getting that, whoa, what was that? Certainly is like is 90s like stuff after like Cacophony with Jason Becker.
Mhm.
It was just insanely good, that stuff. It was just all
I
over
think
the
he's
place.
so underrated.
Yeah,
I know like he's highly rated, but I still think he's underrated.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Like
I also I love his his hand position with the picking technique as well.
it's
Every time I
crazy.
see that, I've tried to work out. Have you seen any of those videos with is it called cracking the code? Is it Troy? What's his name? He looks at
I've heard
people's
of it, but
he looks at people's like picking style and how they navigate, difficult stuff on the guitar. Um, yeah, and that's it's so much fun to watch because he looks at sort of angles of pick
just
attack
absolutely
and
crazy, isn't it?
it's mint to
And
watch.
so yeah, so I was like looking at all this kind of stuff, and I thought like, all right, I'm going to do some proper research on how many hours should a musician practice, and it's specifically just going into like the music side of it. And they recommend sort of no more than 3 hours. They reckon your peak performance is at about 2 hours. So
That
you've
that
got
daily is it?
musicians, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
you've got musicians who will practice 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day, and that kind of thing, and it doesn't really work. They reckon that the output the retention and the ability of the motor sort of skills, so your motor memory, and also what you can actually sort of focus on at a certain like point in time. You don't actually take on any or retain any new information or any new sort of progress. You're actually just then autonomous.
Yeah.
After about maximum about 3 hours, they reckon the best time to sort of practice is between sort of 1 to 2 hours, and it's got to be broken up. It can't just be solid hours because nobody has the concentration for it. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment, is just kind of working on a practice plan
Mhm.
based around sort of 2 hours, because I think 2 hours for anybody in this current climate, certainly in the modern day, is more manageable than Steve Vai's 10-hour workout. You know what I mean? Which is
And do
just
you
not
feel like
feasible.
you've got like even to me like 2 hours is a long time for me.
Mhm.
Do you feel like do you have, excuse me, could you dedicate 2 hours a day to doing
It's
that work?
difficult. I think anybody who can dedicate at least 1 hour, I think 1 hour split up over the day, that's good going, you know. 2 hours is obviously ideal. If days off probably would be fine, but I think it's one of those things where what I've found is, if I was going to do it on a regular basis, I would probably have to do an hour really early, like sacrifice some sleep just to
Mhm.
get up, do it before I start work or before I have to do things or go out to see people, shop, or that kind of thing. And then breaking it up into like two sections, so that 1 hour and then an hour later on somewhere.
So here's something interesting. So heard that you've used the word practice quite a bit. So you've said like about 2 to 3 hours practice. So when you're saying, what's it saying? This meeting will end. We've got 10 minutes, so we can wrap this in 10. And if
Yeah,
this goes into other episodes, if you're happy with meeting again, I'm more than
yeah.
happy to
Definitely,
have
man.
some nice to catch up and stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely, man.
but what I was gonna say is the term practice. When you're saying practice, what constitutes as your practice? Like, what do you mean when you're saying you're going to practice?
So this is it. So I genuinely break it into four technical areas,
Mhm.
and that's alternate picking or economy picking. So that can be anything, string crossing, that kind of thing. Legato, and that could include string skipping, but primarily just like legato focused string skipping.
Mhm.
Tapping, and that includes sort of anywhere up to 8 fingers.
Mhm.
Not that I do that mostly. It's mostly about 6, but working up to 8 fingers, or that's the plan. And then sweeping,
Mhm.
specifically sweeping because it's a whole beast in itself. Um, and then I do a little bit of the scale work, because I always think it's kind of important to keep on top of that.
Mhm.
And then theory. Now, theory is very loose to me because I feel like I dedicate most of the time, maybe that first hour, 15 minutes on each sort of technical area.
Mhm.
And then that last hour is sort of divided between your kind of theory and then that other kind of, tidying up techniques and things like that. For example, I have a really bad habit where I'll show you my guitar. So when I go to bend strings, because I've got a floating trem and I've got loads of floating trems, as you know,
Mhm.
I'm like a massive sort of Ibanez Jackson kind of player. Instead of using, you know, actual vibrato with my fretting hand, a lot of the time I just, you know, hit the whammy.
Mhm.
So I'm create the vibrato through the whammy. So one of my areas for actual technical improvement is the vibrato of strings via the fretting hand.
Yeah. So something that I'm thinking, as I'm listening, it's really interesting to us, right? Because so lots of the things you were talking about there were like, so it said lots about the technique of stuff. So you're going in depth with techniques of like
Yeah,
picking techniques, sort of left hand, right hand techniques. Um, but if I could throw it out to you, so you're saying like if you've got sort of 2 to 3 hours, okay, like so to me, like listening is a practice. So like
yeah, yeah,
say if you've got a song that you're wanting to rehearse, so if I've got something I need to learn, my practice often begins just by listening to the songs like over and over and like internalizing the song. So like that to me, maybe it's because I'm just super lazy, But like to me, like that's a practice. Like me listening to that to practice. So if I can
Yeah,
do that on the drive back from work or going to work, or if I'm going out for like a walk or a run or whatever, like that's good practice to me.
yeah,
Like I used to feel guilty because most of my practice is I like to write songs and just write stuff, and I would do that, and I would spend days and weeks writing stuff, and then feel really guilty about it because I go like, oh, like, but I should be working on this. But I'm more convinced now than ever that like for me is great practice because it's
hmm
making me think. I've started putting the guitar down lots, and I'm playing little bits more of other instruments, and I'm starting to use my voice a bit more.
yeah,
Um, so like for me, practice now is it's much looser than it used to be. So like me
yeah,
writing songs, writing lyrics, thinking
hmm
about melodies, singing something or whatever. That's more like my practice these days rather than like I don't mind saying that I did go through a phase. I got the Chris Brooks technique books, which are brilliant, and I
yeah,
really enjoy doing them. But um, I just find it interesting the sort of the term practice, and like when you're talking about practice there, you're very like technique driven. Like I want to be able
yeah,
to do this, so my technique my practice is going to be made up of all these technical exercises. Whereas I don't know, maybe it is because I'm just like lazy with these things. Um, I love to sit and do bits of technique, but I always get to like I haven't got the capacity to sit and do it for a long time, so I get really
yeah,
bored
yeah.
and then I switch off, and then I start just noodling around and playing my
This
chords.
is this is like, yeah, this is a regular sort of thing that I've found at the moment. With this, it's kind of yeah, it's the
And like
nature of the beast, I think.
improvising as well, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that's practice. And I
yeah,
think like if you can focus the noodling, and think like actually so while I was waiting on my last call, um, while I was waiting for the last podcast thing, for example, right, I was started to listen to some of the band's other stuff that they've released on Spotify, and there's a riff that not now Norman plays. So I don't know where he plays it, but it's this. There's a chord at the start. So I've heard them play it live loads, and it's got this. Where is it? This sort of chord in it, and then I started. That's like Xander's riff that he plays.
hmm
And as I was waiting for them, I started messing around with the chord and wondering like, is that what he plays, or is he adding like another root up here? And then I started getting lost and trying to make something like make my own like acoustic version of it, if you like. And I could have sat there for another hour or so just messing around with it. And
yeah,
I love that. And to me, like that's great practice, like working out
yeah,
what chords you're playing and
yeah,
whatever. And I've just went off on a tangent. Sorry, mate. So
yeah,
I know we're gonna run out of time on this, but
yeah.
um, I'm gonna we'll wrap up before the time goes. But if you're happy just for future chats and
For
things,
like
it's
a
really
part
nice.
two. Yeah, I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean, just like you know what I mean. Like we can just talk
yeah,
about this
absolutely,
because it's
man.
nicest to talk to people about it.
I'd be well up for that. I've got like loads of things that I can sort of bring in, that I was gonna kind of throw in there, so
Yeah, I mean, like we'll see if we can actually get together at some point rather than virtually,
yeah,
like
yeah,
have a
man.
beer and like relax and play some guitar and play some games and stuff. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, man, definitely do
Um,
that.
but look, man. So I'll let you get back to your evening and finishing your
Cool.
ice cream.
It was
So,
definitely ice cream, man. It was
yeah,
definitely, I
yeah.
mean,
You go and enjoy that ice cream, mate. Um, so yeah, like I'll let you get back to your night. But like, thank you very
cool,
much for
man.
your time, man. And we'll do this
Yeah,
again
man.
real soon because it's lovely
Sweet.
speaking to you.
Yeah, you too, man. Take it easy, man, and good luck with the podcast, man. It's been interesting listening in, so I'm enjoying it.
Right, and hear yourself on the next episode.
Great. All right, man.
Awesome,
See you in a
man.
bit, man.
Take it
See
easy,
you, man.
buddy.
Bye. You too,
Bye,
man.
just
Bye.
now.